All right, happy Thursday. On Wednesday's class, we did the demonstration, but I completely forgot to record it all. So it was a doozy. Lots of stuff going on. Most of you were able to follow along just fine, but just in case you need to refer back, I'm going to go ahead and re-record this. So here we go. I'm in my browser, and remember, I'm going to go back and forth. Just a quick rehash of what we did on Monday. Right, we made sure that everybody was set up, that was here, set up on Forma. And here's Forma in my web browser. And then I have Revit open behind me there. Okay, great. So when you're in Forma and you go to the site, you want to take a look at the site master proposal. That's basically just the site clipped with massings, roads, topo, and even a little bounding box of the area of our site. Okay, so that'll be helpful when we bring things over to Revit. In order to do that, I'm just going to click these three dots and say Revit, send to Revit. Okay, there we go. And it's just going to tell me that my proposal has been sent to Revit. If for some reason you're having problems with this, you probably need to add the Revit Forma to Revit extension. Right, so it's over here. It's just a place to go, and you can download this little executable file. That loads up the plugin so that Forma works with Revit, right? So I'm here in proposals. I'm over here on the left. See these little three stacked cubes? That's called extensions. I'm going to click there. I'm going to hit the blue extensions button. I'll get a list of different extensions that Autodesk has curated for me. If you need to go back and forth between Forma and Revit, you just need to download this little plugin and then install it, and then you can open up Revit again, and it'll work. If you need to go back and forth between Forma and Rhino, like I showed back in Project 2 with some of the shading and solar analysis tools, you could do that. And all right, so anyway, I've already sent this project over to Revit. And so now what I need to do, again, quickly, we did this on Monday. So if you followed along on Monday, you can maybe skip ahead here. But I'm just going to go ahead and quickly go over what the things that we did on Monday and then also Wednesday. So new project. All right, you can see my old one here. Instead of saying no template, I'm going to use the Imperial Multidiscipline template or Imperial Architecture template if you have that option. Make sure it's set to project, not project template, and hit OK. It's going to go ahead and open up a new file for me here. All right, and let me just close this old one here. Let's just close that out so I don't get confused. Okay. All right, so here we are. This is the brand new Revit file, and we'll talk about some things later. But of course, we have tools along the top ends, or the top side with these tabs. We have a properties box and a project browser box on the left. So first things first, let's go ahead and bring that Forma site into Revit so we can start to model and build directly on the site here. I'm going to go to, I believe it's Massing and Site tab, up here along the top, Architecture, Structure, Steel. Precast systems, insert, annotate, analyze, and then finally massing and site. There we are. And over here, once you've downloaded and installed that Forma plugin, you have a little Forma section of the massing and site tab. And there's a little button called Load Proposal. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to do that now. Since I sent the proposal over from Forma over to Revit, now it's going to pull this in. It might ask me and open up my browser and have me make sure I log in. But once that happens, it should be fairly quick and fairly easy. It's just in there doing all my work for me. I don't have to worry about exporting a certain way. I don't have to worry about importing a certain way. All I can do is just hit this load a proposal button. You'll notice up here, while we're waiting for this to load, that there's other buttons called like update proposal and unlink proposal. So it'll keep this stuff linked up. And in fact, you can begin to go back and forth using the update proposal. You can send things that you've modeled into Revit back into the Forma model and environment so that you can quickly and easily start to model a building and then bring the building back into Forma to perform our analysis and things like that later on. So here we are. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Converted this mesh into a topo solid for us, and it's projecting roads and bounds and streets and things like that through the site. But there it is. There it is in 3D view. And I also have, looks like it also made an L1 architectural view for me. All right. If you don't get that 3D view, you can go through that project browser and find 3D views. double click 3D. If you don't see a 3D view there, right, we can make one really quickly. We can just go to View tab. I'm up here, my cursor, View. And I can go 3D view. Let's make a nice default 3D view, and it'll basically bring up this axon of the entire site, sort of extends out. We can zoom in and out as we need to here. All right, so the nice thing about Revit is that as you build and model, it sort of produces all the drawings for you. So we have some floor plans already generated. If I drill down into here, we have a working section. We have all our elevations going. And so what I'm going to do is start to set up, let's say where the elevation that my level 1 is actually set to, right? So here's what I mean by that. I'm going to go to the section drawing, and I'm going to look at this. You can see all of this topo, and our site's somewhere up in here, right? But if I zoom in, you can see that just arbitrarily the template had level 1 down here, 0, 0, and then level 2 is 12 feet higher than that, so 12 feet above grade. But it's in the middle of nowhere. In fact, when we brought in our site from Forma, there's no relationship between those levels and where our site actually is, okay? And so one of the things I'm going to do, I'm in the section drawing. I'm going to take these levels. I'm just going to go ahead and select them. I'm going to leave that terrain minimum level right where it is. But level 1 and level 2, I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard and select both of these to select both. And I'm just going to click and move and drag them up a lot higher. Now it's going to say, oh, we can't associate the datum with a specified scope box, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to say disassociate for now. I don't really care. And but I do want to go ahead and take care of that in a section. I'm going to move these up for now, and later I'm going to fine tune where they're at once I can cut a better section through my drawing. But suffice to say, these are governing where a level 1 floor plan and a level 2 floor plan over here are being cut. And then you're looking down through. So let's go to that level 1 floor plan. You can see, we're just looking down at a bunch of topo, and it's actually cropped, again, arbitrarily, because our site is 18 times bigger than this crop box, right? And so we're going to go ahead and get rid of some of these crop boxes, then we'll make our own, all right? But this plan view right now is cropped in the wrong place. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. If I just click somewhere out here in white space, I'm still in my level 1 floor plan. I click outside in white space, so nothing's selected. And what that means is when I look at the properties box, the drawing that I'm in, I'll get the properties for that drawing, and I can scroll down, and I can look and see, okay, there are some crop regions and some scope boxes that are set that are artificially cropping my floor plan in the wrong place. And I'm going to go ahead and start unchecking the crops. This scope box, I'm going to say, no, I don't want a scope box. So it sets you a scope box called Views Overall. When I click this little expand menu, I can set it to none. I can uncheck crop view and hit apply. All right, now I get rid of that silly crop box, and now I can see the whole site from above. And in fact, you can see here, there's my site, right? Now look at this. We're still, that level 1 elevation marker that we moved around in section, it's still a little too low, because look at this. We're actually cutting through the mountainside halfway through our site. So it's not actually 4 feet above grade. It's actually cutting through grade somewhere still. So we'll fine tune that here in a minute. But level 1, let's go ahead and get rid of that scope box. Now we go to level 2. We'll do the same thing. I'm going to make sure nothing's selected. I can look at the properties now for level 2 floor plan, turn off crop region, set scope box to none, uncheck everything that has to do with cropping, and voila. All right. Level 2 looks pretty nice. Okay. And right. Let me go back to that 3D view here. Right. It's the same thing, right? Like my 3D view is not cropped at all. But if it was, if yours is sort of looks funky and doesn't show the whole entire site, you can go ahead and scroll down, do the exact same thing we did. Turn off crop region, crop view, make sure the scope box is set to none. Go ahead and hit apply. Everything should show up again. All right. So let's go to level 1. And just like we in section and elevation views, the side views, we can sort of see where those elevation markers are for our floor plans. In floor plan, we can actually set the section cut markers to start to generate more sections. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a section, a north-south section through my site. All right. So in order to create a new section drawing, I go to one of the plans, And then I go to the View tab up here and find the little section tool, creates a section view. And now I can draw a section marker, north-south, through my site. I want to make sure that's up and down, north-south, true north-south. We're going to go with the sun and cardinal north-south rather than any arbitrary sort of like adjustment for the road. We're going to actually set back from the road and actually have a bridge that connects things up. So just to let you know that. You can see that also, there's an arrow showing which direction the section is being cut and which direction you're looking through. All right. When I did that, let's just go back to our project browser, right? Remember, we can see all of our drawings over here. Floor plans, elevations. It created a new building section, if I hit that plus sign, called Section 2. All right? And now we have a section running right through our site. And this is like the perfect quintessential section to understand our architecture, right? Like we have street here, we'll have our building coming off grade, and then thrusting out over the landscape, cantilevering out a bit, and looking out over the mountain vista and the valley below. All right. So what you can see here is that our section markers, our elevation markers, are levels, right? Those are called levels, L1 and L2. They're still kind of low, right? Let's say I want to start level 1 of the building just right above grade. I'm going to go ahead and select these again. Now that I can see exactly where they would be on our site. And I'm going to go ahead and move these exactly where I want them to go. Just a little, up a little further here. And I'm maybe like right there. Yeah, all right. Beautiful. Okay. Perfect. All right, now when I go back to my level 1 floor plan, I can see all the way down. I can see, okay, yeah, it's mostly, yeah. There's a lot of topo in here. So up this direction, the terrain continues upward, and our plan actually cuts through ground. So yeah, that's not expected, or not unexpected, I might add. But now we sort of have everything sort of calibrated now again. Now, it's not lost on me that in every drawing that we have now, we sort of see like all of the site around us all the time. And it might actually be helpful to make our own scope box where we can sort of crop things just so we can really zoom in and just look at our site and the immediate area around it. We can always turn it on or off when we need to see further. But for now, I kind of want to maybe make my own scope box now. So I'm in the floor plan view, right? And I'm still in that view tab, and I'm going to go ahead and find the scope box button. Okay, click it, and then that'll let me, just as it says, make a scope box. I can draw a box in plan, all right? And that box is still selected. While it's still selected, I can go to its properties. Let's rename it. Let's call this Josh's scope box or something like that. You don't have to name it after me, but there we go. All right. And it's still selected, right? It's still blue. I'm going to go ahead to my section. You can see in my section, I need to maybe adjust this. I'm going to go ahead and make this deeper so I can see. There we go. Yeah, just like that. All right. Now, when I go back to my floor plan, I unselect everything. I can sort of zoom out here and just sort of click on white space. Clear my selection, and then I have my floor plan properties. Once again, I can zoom down just where we turned off that scope box and put none. Now we can click through and we can actually find Josh's scope box and set that. All right, there's our site. You can see our old section marker was over here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. It's kind of like junk now. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, boom, it's gone. All right, section 2 is where it's at. Section 1, long gone now. All right, we can do the same thing for level 2, right? Floor plan 2, right? Every time I open something here, it remains open up here as a tab, so I can start to toggle back and forth between different orientations and drawings. So for level 2, I can again scroll down, look for the scope box, set it to Josh's scope box. All right, I can do the exact same thing with a 3D view. Right? This is a lot to take in, but if I go down, let's see, 3D view, try to find that scope box. There we go. In the properties, Josh's scope box. All right, there it is. Here's our old scope box. I'm just going to go ahead and select that and delete it away. Don't need that at all. In fact, it's really annoying me. All right, so there's our site. And next thing I need to think about is making a grid, right? So, classic way of sort of thinking about structure. The first thing we're going to build is our steel frame, columns and beams. Easiest way to do that is begin to set a grid. Typically, when I'm looking at how to organize a project, I think in terms of axes and grids. And when I'm looking at a rectangular grid, then I start to look at the site constraints, the program, as well as what my structural system, what kind of spans it can achieve, and try to find that sweet spot. In this case, I'm going to tell you we're going to make 3 bays, 3 by 1 bays, running north-south, 24 feet on center, running north-south, and then the width of the bays in east-west are going to be 36 feet. So let me show you how to do that. First, we start to draw grid lines. And this is a pretty common thing when you're making construction documents anyway. So when you start to work in an office, if you haven't yet, you'll be acquainted with this. But typically, we'll start to establish a column grid with those little bubble labels. Let's see. So I go to Architecture tab. And Architecture tab, we spend a lot of time, let's say, first of all, in View tab. Architecture tab has a lot of the ingredients that we'll be using when we start to model things. So, I have walls, doors, windows, columns, roofs, floors, etc., stairs, ramps. But over here on the right, we have something called grids. We can place column grid lines in the building design. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And by default, it's going to let me draw a line. Surprise. And I'm just going to simply draw a line right here and release it over here. Okay. It's going to be north-south. I want it to be true north-south. I don't care about the property line. I want to be, again, I want the north face of the building to face due north. I want the south face of the building to face due south, and east and west accordingly. Now, I'm going to go back where I started up here. I'm not clicking. I'm just sort of hovering over. You can see that as I start to move this way, it's going to give me a readout of how far away I am from the last column grid line I made, that's a handy thing. Because if I wanted to make 36 feet away, there we go, 36 feet, then I can sort of move it along carefully. And I can bring it down here. All right, so we have column grid 1, line 1 and 2, lines 1 and 2 running north-south. And like I said, those are 36 feet apart on center. And then I'm going to actually, what I'm going to do? I'm going to move these. It's a little close to this edge here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select one, select the other, holding down the control key so I can select both at the same time. Just going to move them. Oh, and look at that, I selected the wrong thing. Oops. Here we go. Get that grid line, zoom in a little bit, make sure I'm selecting the right thing. Hold down that control key, then I'll move these over. I'm going to try to, get that just a little more centered on my site there. All right, and now I'm going to make some east-west column grid lines. So I'm going to start over here and move this way. There we are. Then I'll do it again, 24 feet up, right? So these bays are going to be 24 feet each. So we'll have structural bays of 36 by 24. There we are. And I'm going to have 3 bays, so I have to draw 4 of these. 24. And they just keeps numbering them upwards, 3, 4, 5, 6. Typically, when we change direction, you typically start to change those to letters, so that way, we'd have a column A1 or C3 or whatever, just like Battleship. But let's see here. We can change that in just a minute once we get these established. All right, there's my grid, and not a big surprise. What we're going to do is I'm going to start to then snap columns to this grid. But first, let's see here. I have 1 and 2, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to move this upwards just so I can see it a little better. There we go. Yeah, much better. And here I'll start with A. I'll just click on that label. Click, click. Oh, let's get the right thing selected here. Oops. Click, click. C. It's gonna annoy me until I fix that. D. There we are. Okay. All right. So now we're ready to make some steel structure, some columns. And All right. Let me go ahead and just, it'll ask me to save periodically. I'm just not going to do that because this is just a brand new file I started just for this recording. All right, so anyway, let's see. We have architecture tab open. Let's move to structure tab. Okay. When I move to structure tab, you can see I have beams and I have columns. I'm going to move to the columns. And then in my properties tab, it asks me what kind of column do I want, right? You can see I have a full gamut here of concrete rectangular columns, steel columns, hollow steel, tubes, and then W shapes, right? Some of the things that you probably learned about in structures. I'm going to pick a W10 by 33. It's a 10-inch deep web, 33 pounds per linear foot. And what I'm going to do when I select this, right, up here in the properties, do you notice how the constraints, it says move with the grids, right? So what I'm going to do when I place this, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make sure that I'm snapping to that grid, those grid intersections, and click. All right. And what that means is that the columns are going to be attached to the grids. And so when I move the grid lines, if I need to readjust those at any time, everything else will sort of adjust with them, including those columns. So it says none of the created columns are visible in floor plan 1. That's not unexpected, and let me show you why. Okay. Let me go ahead and position a second one here as well. Okay, all right. And let's go to our 3D view and see what it's up to, what it's doing here. So we have these columns that I've placed. Right, here's one. And what you can see when I select it in its properties is that it's set to end, the top level, at the top of this column is supposed to end at level 1. And then the base, the bottom of the column is set to 9 feet below level 1 because there's a base offset of 9. So I'm going to change the top to go up to level 2. And I'll change the base offset to just 0. So that goes from level 1 to level 2 only. All right, there it goes. All right. And if I go to my section, I could probably see both of these. Not sure what my mouse is doing here. What's going on? All right, well, anywho. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Just not letting me select anything in section. There we go. Maybe I'm... Not sure why it's selecting this way. But anyway. All right, so L1. Back to L1. You can see that now I can see our column. This column here, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can select it. And, didn't look like I selected anything. Oh, great. There's that one. Means the other one, an axon, is somewhere like right over here. Just not sure where it's at. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'll select this one as well. Ay, ay, ay. And do the exact same thing. I'm going to tell it to go up to level 2. And start at level 1, go up to level 2, and stop. Hit apply. Okay, finally. Ay, ay, ay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Hopefully with these settings, I can just continue to make these columns. All right, and let's see, where am I? Come on, column, there we are. 1033, all right. Okay, I'm gonna have to adjust each one. That's annoying, but okay, whatever. All right, so let me go ahead and keep putting these at the grid lines here. All right, last set. There's one. There's another one. Then I'll go to my 3D view and I'll look and see where these things are and start to fix them. All right, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of, yeah, okay. We can't have it start and stop at the same place. So I have to set the top, then go ahead and erase the bottom. All right, there we go. Now I'll go ahead and just hold Control and select all of these at once and just change them all at once. This is kind of ridiculous, but 0, hit apply. All right, so now we have the start of our column grid. We have columns in the right place, but let's look at our section. You can see here in our section, things are sort of like just sort of sitting around in different places. So you can see that the columns don't actually meet the ground. They start at level 1 and go up to level 2, so they're sort of floating. So when it comes to the bottoms of these, I'm just going to have them go right into the ground. One of the things I'm going to do is maybe make another level, right? It's like making a grid in elevation for, let's say, the bottom of the steel. Right, so I'm in Architecture tab, and when I go over to the right where my grids are, when I'm in section or elevation, I can add a level. So I can click that, and just like I added grid lines, I can sort of go off of this one. And let's see, it needs to be, that's probably good right there. Let's see, so there, over to here, just make it another elevation. And this is going to be called L4 for some silly reason. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that label. I'm going to call this bottom of structure. All right. And now what I'm going to do, let's see if I can get these things right. There we go. I'm going to just click and drag and make a box from left to right around all of these columns. I'm going to double check in the filter and make sure that all I have is selected the columns. And now with all of those selected at once, I can say for the base level, let's set that to bottom of structure. Now they're going to go down into the ground and then come out of the ground and go up to level 2. All right, level 2 is kind of a dud here. So here's the interesting thing, right? We have level 1 at 220 feet and 5/8 inches, nice round number, above, let's say, this weird elevation marker down here. I'm not too worried about that. But we have level 1, and I want level 2 to be, let's say, 20 feet above level 1. All right, so this is 220. This is 232. But what you can see is that when I select my level 2 level marker here, my level grid line, it actually shows us that dimension between that sort of floor to floor. Level 1 up to level 2 is 12 feet. And I can just click on that dimension and then edit it right here. I can change that to 20, and then level 2 will move up 20 feet instead of 12 feet above the finished floor of level 1. All right, so there we go. And that checks out. 220, this is 240. Yeah, that sounds right. Okay. Last, we're going to actually have quite a tall pavilion. And so I'm going to make a level 3, or basically the top of the steel and the bottom or underside, the soffit of the roof. And so I want that to be 48 feet above level 1. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make another grid line. Oh, not a grid line, sorry. A level, there we go, it's right next to the grids. Sometimes I get confused. And I'll start a level 2, and I'll just sort of move this thing up incrementally. And I want this to be 28 feet above level 2. There we go. So it'll be 48 feet above level 1. All right, yeah, 28 feet. There we go. And I'm going to call this top of steel. Yeah. That way when I know what I'm looking at when I see these levels. So what's interesting about this is I can generate plans. And in fact, I will do that here in just a minute for, let's say, top of steel. It didn't actually generate the floor plan for me, but there's a way to generate those through Revit. So first of all, bear with me. I want to, again, select all these columns. And there we go. Right there, like that. Go to that filter and make sure I have, just four columns selected. Only 4? I should have 8. Oh, it's because in the section I'm not seeing the others. Oh, that's so silly. I'm going to go down to the 3D view and just hold down Control and click multi-select, basically. So I have all those selected. Okay, base level, where they start, I want them at the bottom of structure. Top level, I want to be top of steel. There we go. Hit apply. Now we have a nice column grid. All right, so sometimes when you make new levels, it'll generate the floor plans for you, but sometimes it won't. And when you run into that problem and you need, let's say, a new level that you've made, like top of steel, you need to see the plan for it. Here's what we can do. We can go to the View tab, and over here we set a scope box. Over here we made 3D views. Over here we made a section. There's a button over here called Plan Views. I can go ahead and click on that and expand it out and select Floor Plan. And now it's going to show me the additional levels that I have in section here that I don't have floor plans of yet. So I can say top of steel, select that and say make a new floor plan top of steel. Okay, there it is. Now I'm looking down from the very, very top. Okay. Interestingly, it's not cutting through the columns. The columns aren't shown as being cut through because they end at the top of steel elevation, whereas the plan for top of steel is 4 feet above, right? That's a sort of typical convention for architectural floor plan, 4 feet above the finished floor, so, or the elevation marker for the floor. So let's see. Right, so we have columns. Now let's start to make some beams. And here's what I'm going to do. Let's go to 3D view for a second. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and make these along the top. I'm going to make beams that sort of span 36 feet from east to west between column and column. And then I'll do the 24 footers spanning north-south between columns, the sort of over the 3 bays that we made north-south. So let's go to our top of steel. We know where the columns are. They're located their center points are at these grid intersection points. And so let's go to a structure again. Here's where we made columns. Next to that, beams. We can start to look at W shapes. And I'm going to make some nice looking beams, 18-inch deep beams that are 40 feet per linear foot, W18 by 40s. And I'm just going to go ahead and click over here. So, all right. Now it's giving me a little error here saying none of the created elements are visible in the floor plan. That's not a big surprise because normally these would be underneath the floor, holding up the floor, so we wouldn't see them anyway. If we're drawing, let's say, beams on, let's say, top of steel floor plan, then what we're doing is we're drawing them below the top of steel, right? If we're doing it in level 1, then it would assume that we're putting in the beams underneath the level 1 floor slab, right? So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that box. Let's do it again. Let's make the beam go from B1 to B2, and a beam go from C1 to C2, and D1 to D2. There we are. Let's go to a 3D view, and you can see them. All right. Now, interestingly, when I select this column, Revit looks at the sort of overall shape and draws a bounding box to it. And even though I was snapping to the center point to draw these beams, the beams actually only come to, like, say, the bounding box edge of the column. So we need to fix that. Visually, I want to fix that because we're going to render this out later. And I want all these beams and columns exposed. I want to show them off, sort of express the structure on the inside here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that beam. When I select it, I get a series of modify tools. And one of them is called change reference. So I'm holding my cursor over right now. I select the beam, then it lets me change the reference for the endpoint of the beam. And now I can zoom in and just select that web, the web of the column, so that the beam goes all the way to the web of the column. There we go. And I'll do that over here as well. Select the beam, change reference, zoom in, select that web. And again. And again. And then I'll do the other side as well. It's a little annoying to do this, have to do this, but we want it to look correct when we render this thing out. We don't want it to look like beams are just floating around in space. We want them to look like they frame into the columns. So go ahead and click, change reference, zoom in, make sure you're selecting that web. All right, there we go. Same thing here. Change reference. Just keep going. Got to select the beam, then you can change reference, then you can select the web. There we go. Beam, reference, zoom in, web. Okay. And now I need to draw the north-south beam, so I'm going to go back to top of steel plan and do the exact same thing. I'll use the same beams here. I'm just going to assume that 18 inches is going to help me out with either span. Click, click, and click, click. All right. Get that little error box. Let's go to that 3D view. Here they should be okay. They should be going right back into the flanges, the wide flanges, right? So, all right, let's see the flanges of your columns. So yeah, okay. Now we have some framing. Whoop, whoop. At least along the top, along that roof. That's the top of steel. And now what we need to do is we need to do a level 1 and level 2. I'm going to go ahead and do the level 1. Okay. Let's go to level 1 floor plan. Here we are. And once again, I'm just going to go ahead and select beams. Make sure I have the W18 by 40 selected. And I'm just going to go ahead and click, click. Draw the east-west ones first. Make sure I just sort of systematically, methodically don't miss any. That would be a bad thing. Zoom out and zoom back in. Let's just put that right there to there. Yeah. All right. And then we'll do the north-south ones as well. Now, what's interesting about this is that the tops of the beams are going to be set to come directly up to level 1, that elevation. And typically, the beams would be holding up a floor slab with thickness, and that the top of that floor slab would be our level 1 elevation, and the beams would be underneath, holding things up. So now we have to start thinking about how things are actually constructed. We're building this thing virtually before it would be built physically. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to think maybe now a step ahead. I'm going to have to adjust the height, the elevation, where these beams are relative to the floor. And so let me just think a step ahead. I'm going to go to architecture. I'm going to go to the floors and go to floor architectural. I'm just going to look at the options and start to maybe decide on a typical floor system. And here's the one I would probably settle on: lightweight concrete, 3-inch concrete slab on a composite 2-inch metal deck, right? So we're going to have that corrugated metal deck sitting on top of the beams, and then concrete cast on top of the metal deck, right? Now, if I click on that, and you can see it, that would assume 3 inches of slab, 2 inches of metal deck. That's 5-inch thickness. And so what we need to do is we need to move our beams down 5 inches, right, to compensate for that thickness of the floor, right? So that the floor deck is then, the steel deck is then sitting on top of the columns, and then the concrete's cast on top of the deck. But then at the top of that concrete is still at level 1. Everything else is sort of the sandwich below. It sort of stacks up. So we need to reverse engineer here a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hit X to get out of the floor thing. But now that I've picked a floor and I know it's going to be 5 inches deep, I can start to select all of my beams that I just created on level 1. Just go ahead and start to hold down that control. I'll just pick the first bay to start off with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the properties. I'm going to look at the level offset. So here's where I need to say, well, actually, I don't want the beams, the top of the beam, to be at level 1 precisely. I want it to be at level 1 minus 5 inches, so 5 inches below level 1. So down here at the level offset, I'm going to say negative 0 feet 5 inches for the start, and then also for the end. So the start, we'll just take the starting point of the beams and move them down, but we also need to sort of keep the beams level. So we need to make the end as well. Oops, negative 5 inches. There we are. There we go. All right. So now you can see that this first bay, it's 5 inches below that level 1, and we need to do that for all of our beams. And that way, when we start to draw a floor on this bad boy, everything will be just fine. All right. So let's go ahead and select all the other beams here that we have. Oh yeah, look at that. And I'm going to go ahead and bring them all down. Negative 5 and negative 5. Come on now. And hit apply. Bring those bad boys down. Another thing I need to do, unfortunately, Revit's not going to remember and keep those settings that I wanted. I need to bring the ends of these beams and just reset their reference to the webbing of the columns again. So one of the things I'm going to do really quickly, right now the site solid is sort of getting in our way. I'm going to go ahead and select it. It's highlighted blue now. And down here in these sunglasses, I can temporarily hide and isolate things. So I can click that out and then select hide elements. And I'm just going to temporarily hide that so it's out of the way. I can sort of see everything here. All right, so here are my beams, just underneath level 1, holding up level 1 floor. Let's see, I'm going to select this beam, and I'm going to say change reference. I'm going to select this web. There we go, bring that in. Bring it in. All right, here's the beam, change reference. There's the flange, or sorry, the web. Webbing and flange. Change reference. Just go ahead and fix these things really quickly. This isn't a huge project, so I don't mind sort of doing this without automating it. By the time I figured out how to automate this, I would have been able to do this already. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that beam again from the other side. Just make sure that both sides are sort of matching up with the columns here. Okay. Change reference. Here we go. Some little things, but overall, it just, again, what we're doing is we're just going to the structure tab, making columns, making beams, choosing the appropriate shaped and sized structural members, and then plopping them in along the grid lines that we created, right? Those grids are important. If I need to change something all at once, I can change the levels, and then all the floors start to move accordingly. And if I change the column grid lines, and all the column grids and walls start to change accordingly, okay? So it's really important that you set that up first so that everything else just works, and everything else is associated with them. All right, let's go to those sunglasses. Let's reset. When I go back, I reset, and now I can see my topo again. You can see that, yeah, I probably have to excavate some dirt here to let that beam hit that column. I'm not too concerned about that at the moment. You know, we could grade that on site, get a good landscape architect to help us figure that out. All right. Now, last but not least, let's make a second floor. And I'm just going to make a one bay of the second floor. I'm just going to make a little mezzanine office above the entrance along the south, that the sort of first bay. We have 3 bays running south to north. That first most south bay, I'm just going to fill in with some columns, some beams at the second floor level, so that later on I can put a little office and staff area up there. But still wouldn't interfere with this sort of big, tall vista view that we're capturing with our big picture window here at on the north end. So let's go to the level 2, and we'll do the same thing. Actually, what I'll show you is a special copy, and paste that you can do. So let me just select this beam. You getting ready to go? You getting ready to go? 109. Getting ready to go? Are you ready to go once the class ends? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select these, and I'm just going to go ahead and up here, when I select something, I get this modify panel. I'm going to hit copy the clipboard, or just hit Control C. But instead of just hitting Control V normally, I'm going to go to the paste, and I can go to now. Let's say I want to make a copy of these beams on the second floor. I can go to level 2 floor plan, and I can say paste aligned to current view, and now I'll have them pasted onto the second floor. There we are. Yeah, there. Let's go to that 3D view. You can see them there. They're 5 feet below the level 2. I do just need to adjust these things really quickly. Right, again, I need to adjust the beam, select the beam, change reference, extend it out to the web of the column, select that beam. You think there'd be a better way of adjusting that at the beginning, but sadly I haven't found it. Click, change reference, select that web, select the beam, change reference, zoom in, select that web. All right, there we go. And voila, now we have our steel frame. Right, so we'll have a floor over here, a roof up above, floor this way. We'll talk more about that on Monday. We'll start adding floors and talk about some of the other things that we're going to do, walls and etc. Okay. Can't wait. See you then.